第三段我们来分享这个甘乃迪这个影像哈。甘乃迪参议员呢，甘乃迪参议员他在国会的时候，针对政府这么有效能的把这一些问题抓出来，关键就是有 AI 的协助了。好，可是 AI 的协助当然是伊隆马斯克的强项，所以我们知道现在你去使用这个 Grok 哈，虽然说只是请他去抓一些资料回来做一些分析，可是它不只是有这样的一个功能，这个我早就说过了。这个 AI 绝对不只是要去做电动车的自驾，还是说只是帮我们抓一些资料做分析，它更关键的是它可以用在财报上面。所以在美国政府的斗局上面呢，好，我们就来看看这个也是一样叫做约翰甘乃迪哈，他怎么来分析，到底为什么民主党的人这样跳脚，这样生气，这些参议员到底在生气什么哈？来，我们来看这段分享。
I want to try to put in perspective what many of my Democratic friends have been talking about today. They're very, very, very upset at President Trump. And they're very, very, very upset at Elon Musk. President Trump ran for president on a number of issues. One of the issues he ran on, he said it almost every day. He said, if you elect me president, I'm going to go through the entire budget and review all the spending, line by line. If I heard him say that once, I heard him say it 1,000 times. And that's what he's been doing. He went out and appointed, through an executive order, Elon Musk, who some people like him, some don't, but he's not a dummy. He's a very successful business person. He's got a top secret security clearance. President Trump issued an executive order, and he turned to Mr. Musk, and he said, Mr. Musk, I want you to do for me what I said I was going to do in the election. I want you to go through all the spending, line by line. Now, let me ask you something, Mr. President. How are you going to review the spending without reviewing the spending? How are you going to audit the spending by an agency without auditing the agency? That's what I mean when I say common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C. That's what Mr. Musk is doing. He's put together a crackerjack team, and they're going through everybody's spending line by line, item by item. And my Democratic colleagues are very, very, very upset. And they've been very eloquent. They've talked about the process, and President Trump's executive order supposedly violates the Constitution. And they've accused Mr. Musk of having conflicts of interest. And so I've heard people say he's sitting over there with a notepad copying down everybody's Social Security number, and he's going to go use it to make money. I mean, people in this town, not just my Democratic colleagues, they're really upset. They've never said anybody question their spending. But that's what Mr. Musk is doing. But you know, I've listened. This has been going on for a week. People have been screaming like they're part of a prison riot. Oh, my God, look at what Musk is doing. He's looking at the spending. And I've listened to people talk about the process and debate whether it's constitutional and discuss how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin. But you know what? I haven't heard one single person who's upset with President Trump or Mr. Musk talk about what he's found. They don't want to talk about the spending porn, the waste of taxpayer money that he's found. I mean, that's the point of all this. I tell you who is interested. The American people, the people in America who get up every day and go to work and obey the law and pay their taxes and try to educate their kids and try to do the right thing by their kids and try to save a little money for retirement and have had to live through 20% inflation under President Biden. They understand what Musk is doing. They understand spending porn and wasting taxpayer money. Now, Mr. Musk started with the USAID. That handles a lot of foreign aid for America. American people are very generous. In our country, when you're homeless, we'll house you. When you're hungry, we'll feed you. In our country, when you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. And we send a lot of money overseas to help our world's neighbors. And the USAID is in charge in large part of that. But I'll tell you what Mr. Musk discovered. I find it fascinating. He discovered that the American taxpayers are giving money to Afghanistan. He found that we are giving money to Yemen. He found that we are giving money to Syria. I didn't know that. Some of our foreign aid is going to Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria. He found that the USAID has 10,000 people, employees. And every year they give away $40 billion. Mr. Musk also found, and I'm not saying that all of this money is wasteful. I'm not. Some of this money, I'm sure, does some good. That's why Secretary Rubio is going to revamp the department and separate the good from the bad. But this is the kind of stuff Mr. Musk found. He found that the USAID gave money to support electric vehicles in Vietnam. Our money, taxpayer money. He found that USAID gave money to a transgender clinic in India. I didn't know that. I bet you the American people didn't know that. He found that the USAID gave $1.5 million to a Serbian LGBTQ group called Grupa Izadaji. I probably mispronounced that. My apologies. Anyway, they got $1.5 million to, quote, advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business community. What else did Mr. Musk found that my colleagues don't want to talk about? Well, he reviewed a study and then went and checked it. The study was done by the Middle East Forum. They found that USAID spent $164 million to support radical organizations around the world. We're not talking Cub Scout troops here. We're talking about radical organizations around the world. They gave $122 million of that to groups aligned with foreign terrorist organizations. Our taxpayer money. According to this report in Mr. Musk, the USAID has given millions of dollars to, quote, organizations in Gaza controlled by Hamas. Why aren't my colleagues talking about that? Recipients of the money, they found, have, quote, called for their lands to be cleansed from the impurity of Jews. That's who we're giving foreign aid to. What else? I'm not going to spend my whole time talking about this, but nobody else is talking about it. They're just talking about the process. And Mr. Musk, and he's a mean guy, and he shouldn't be looking at our spending. Well, he is. And I kind of find what he's found out interesting. He found that we gave $2 million, USAID did, for sex changes in Guatemala. He found that we gave $20 million to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. He found that we gave $4.5 million of taxpayer money to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. He found that we gave $10 million, USAID did, of meals to an al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group called the Nusra Front. Mr. Musk found that we gave $7.9 million of taxpayer money to a project that would teach Sri Lankan journalists to avoid binary gendered language. The USAID took $8 million and gave it to a bunch of journalists in Sri Lanka to teach them how to avoid binary gendered language. I don't know what the hell binary gendered language is. I think I do. You think most taxpayers would support that? Why aren't we talking about that? The USAID gave $1.5 million to promote LGBT advocacy in Jamaica. They gave $1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem. They gave $1.5 million for, quote, art for inclusion of people with disabilities in Belarus. Another $3.9 million for LGBT causes in Macedonia. $8.3 million for equity and inclusion education in Nepal. I could go all night. And many of my colleagues are upset. They're really mad at Mr. Musk. Hell, I think we ought to give him a medal. All he's doing is what President Trump said he was going to do. President Trump said he's going to audit the spending. So Trump goes and hires Musk, again with the top secret security clearance. Nobody can quibble with his intelligence. You know, the guy's as smart as Einstein's cousin. He's a very successful businessman. Some say he's the richest guy in the world. And he's doing the auditing. And man, he's finding a lot of stuff. I call it spending porn. Now, I'm not saying everything that USAID does is wasted, but I'm saying a lot of it is. A hell of a lot of it is. And we ought to be on the floor of this United States Senate thanking Mr. Musk. And we ought to be asking him to go through every agency and look at everybody's budget. Everybody's budget. That's what the American people want. They don't want to talk about process. They don't want to continue with the Washington way. They want to save some money. Now, let me tell you what's really going on here, too, Mr. President. For 4 years under President Biden, and for 8 years under President Obama, I have all the respect in the world for President Biden and President Obama. Tough job. But between them, they spent 12 years in Washington, and presidents set the tone. They control the questions that are asked. And here's the question that President Obama and President Biden asked for 8 years. For 12 years. I heard it every single day. Who needs to pay more in taxes? Is it you? Is it you? Who needs to pay more in taxes? We need more money. Who needs to pony up more? That was the issue. But that's not the issue today. We have a new president. You know what the issue is today? What the hell happened to all the money? What the hell happened to all the money? And that's what Mr. Musk is finding out. That's all this is about. And I'm just shocked that my colleagues have decided that this is a hill they're going to die on. How can you look the American people in the eye and support this kind of waste, support this kind of spending porn? I mean, the election to me made at least one thing clear, that the American people are sick and tired of people in Washington denying reality. The last administration tried to convince us that we were living in a crime-free world where inflation was temporary and the border was secure. And the American people didn't buy it. You know why? Because it wasn't true. And the administration, our last administration, tried to argue that Bidenomics was making our lives better. But the American people knew differently. They understood Bidenomics to mean I get to spend more to live worse. And they voted. Now, I mean, the American people were poorer under the last administration, but they didn't become stupid. They could see that the government was creating a problem, not trying to fix it. And they noticed the national debt, too. Put up that first chart for me. You know what our national debt is, Mr. President? $36 trillion. Not million, not billion, $36 trillion. It takes my breath away. Highest it's ever been, over 100% of our gross domestic product. Our debt's growing faster than our economy. And we toss around these numbers, $1 trillion, $1 billion, $1 million. Since 2019, America's population has grown 2%. We're not having babies, 2%. And that's after massive immigration. You know how much our budget has grown? 55%. 55%. Yeah, we've had inflation, but we haven't had 55% worth of inflation. That's how we got to this $36 trillion in debt. Put up the next chart for me. Now, some of this money we had to spend during the pandemic, and it was a bipartisan effort during the pandemic. Republicans voted for it, and Democrats voted for it because we had no choice. I was there. I saw it from the inside. We came this close to losing the American economy. And you know who helped a lot, doesn't get enough credit? Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve. I watched it. The whole world wanted to go into a cave and retreat. Back in the Great Recession, I remember all the other countries in the world who looked to us. They may hate us, but they know we're the greatest country in all of human history. They looked to America. And you know what? Back in the Great Recession, all the other countries wanted they wanted treasuries, treasury notes, treasury bonds. Not this time. They were so scared. They didn't want treasuries. They wanted dollars, cash dollars. So Jay Powell, thank the Lord, he goes over to the Federal Reserve. He opens what's called a currency swap line, and he told every country, you want dollars? I'll trade you dollars for your currency. And everything calmed down. He doesn't get any credit for that, but it was a gutsy thing to do. But on top of that, to save the American economy, that wasn't helping the American economy. We had to keep the economy going. We spent a lot of money. But then COVID ended. And what we should have done was go back to pre-COVID spending. But we didn't do that. President Biden, after the shutdowns and the coronavirus, the pandemic was over, passed the American Rescue Plan. COVID was over. He spent $1.9 trillion. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I didn't vote for it. Then he came back and passed what he called an infrastructure bill. It was really just the Green New Deal. I know what's in that bill. That was another $1.2 trillion. And And then he passed the Inflation Reduction Act. I didn't vote for it, but that was another $1.0 trillion. And then he passed the CHIPS Act. This is really special. He said, big tech, the semiconductor companies need our money. They need taxpayer money. They're not making enough money. And he gave them money. He didn't give hardware stores money. President Biden didn't give the healthcare industry money. He said, I want to help big tech. And boy, they sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe. We spent $280 billion subsidizing big tech. And you add it all up, and that's $4.3, almost $4.5 trillion. And that's how we got $36 trillion in debt. And that's why Donald Trump said, I'm going to look at every single line item of spending. And that's why he gave the job to Elon Musk. And that's why Musk is auditing these accounts. But nobody wants to talk about what he's finding. Nobody wants to talk about the spending porn, except the American people. They get it, Mr. President. They get it. And I hope Mr. Musk continues. My colleague and friend, we had a little discussion in banking today. Senator Warner makes a good point. He wants Mr. Musk to come over and talk to Congress about how he's doing this. I'm all for that. I am all for that. I would love to have him come over and walk us through what he's doing and how he's discovering all this spending porn. We need all the help we can get on reducing our spending because we can't continue at this pace. I just wanted to spend a few minutes putting all this in perspective, Mr. President. The world's not going to spin off its axis, folks. Every business that I know of goes through an audit. Now we're being audited, but we're being audited by not by the usual auditors, but we're being audited by a person appointed by the President of the United States. And I'm betting you when he's through, and he's going to go to all these agencies. He's starting on the Department of Education next. I think he'll end up finding that some of our money is being well spent, but he's also going to find that some of our money is being stolen and it's being wasted. And that's an insult to every taxpayer in this country. So I'm going to end like I began. We ought to be giving Mr. Musk a medal. We ought to be thanking him. Maybe nobody else wants to hear about this spending porn, but I can't wait to read the book. I hope he finds all of it and compiles it. I hope Marco Rubio, our new Secretary of State, takes USAID and shakes them by the shoulder and lifts up the good people there and fires the bad people, the people that wasted taxpayer money like this, giving money to terrorist organizations, giving money to organizations that support Hamas. Hope he gets rid of every single one of them. And I think if we listen to Mr. Musk, we can save a lot of money. And I hope he does come over and explain what he's doing.
好，是不是非常的精彩？我觉得为什么其实它全部只有15分钟哦？为什么让大家全部看完？就是因为没有一句是废话，真的没有一句是废话。而且他说，如果他要把所有的重点通通都读出来的话，他可以持续一整夜，他可以不用睡觉。多么的离谱啊！一年呢，400-500亿的钱就这样子花掉了，美金不是台币400-500亿的美金，然后真的是自己国内都没有照顾好，而且把钱撒出去，如果真的有效果的话，那也就算了，不是啊？你导致这些国家可能都觉得你有什么毛病，你要去全世界去把整个全世界都变成 DEI， 都变成同性同婚，那 OK， 我们不应该歧视任何一个人的性别的取向，但有没有必要去鼓励他，这是两回事。而且为什么美国有必要去鼓励这件事？为什么美国要纳税义务人钱要花在这上头？每个人辛苦的工作，把钱交给国家之后，没想到钱是这样被用的，所以当然纳税义务人会非常的火大嘛。为什么国会议员会这么火大？而且我觉得甘乃迪议员讲得非常的清楚，你们到底在生气什么？我听你们讲的就是伊隆马斯克的资格有问题，然后这是独裁，有各种的批评，对于川普很生气。可是没有一个人针对伊隆马斯克已经找出来这些东西，你们为什么不讨论这些内容呢？这个才是真正斗局的关键的问题嘛。也不是伊隆马斯克到底雇佣了哪一些人来，这些人有的薪水很低，有人根本没有领薪水，然后逼迫这些人必须要去辞职。现在已经有一个人辞职了，才4个人已经有一个人辞职了，4个人就抓出来，长期以来这不是1年的预算，这个机构已经存在了60年了， 60年来都是这样花钱的，多可怕！他养了1万个蠹虫啊！当然，我们不能说里面都是坏蛋，但是套句共产党的问题哈，就是有很多中国人在批评共产党的时候，批评的非常的精准。他说，如果说把共产党、中共这些官员排站，一个人给一枪，一定有冤枉的，一定有误杀的。可是如果隔一个给一枪，那一定有错放的。所以他的贪污腐败到了什么程度了？斗局也一样啊，里面一定有好人，但是坏人居多。而且这些坏人呢，竟然90%在上一次的选举的时候捐款给卡马拉，请问为什么？这个都有相关的因素嘛？这个完全都是正相关的啊，所以我觉得太精彩了。如果说他在非常短的时间里面可以抓出这么多弊端，那当他开始去看教育部的问题的时候，去看教育部的预算，不敢给你看啊。现在川普派的教育部部长是要去结束教育部的，他觉得联邦当时在成立这个国家的时候，并没有给联邦教育的这个责任，他也没有这个权利。记不记得我们分享这个先父纪念碑？美国的建国的精神是什么？他认为说人应该有信仰，然后基于信仰，我们有道德，道德是往内看，所以道德的那个代表的那个雕像呢，它是一个眼盲的，是盲眼的女性。为什么？道德要看自己，不是看别人。然后因为有道德，所以我们建立法律，所有人都要遵守法律。可是法律是最小的一个规范，要先有道德才有法律。只是为了让维持秩序，所以它保护生命的安全，而不是让你的做生意的自由、其他的自由去限制你。没有。好，有了这些东西之后，我们才有教育。教育它的雕像讲的非常的细哈。教育的雕像是什么？是一个结婚的妇女，年轻的妇女在教自己的孩子，然后有一些长辈已经是老人了，老人要负责来教育，还有一些传教士传道解惑。所以教育是国家的事吗？教育不是啊，教育是我们的家庭教育，我们的地区你住在哪里，所以顶多是各州，那个州要做教育的工作，而不是联邦要来做教育的工作。当联邦做教育的工作的时候，其实他剥夺了什么？他就是要洗脑，他要把集体的意识、统一的意识灌输给孩子，才需要联邦的教育，是不是这样子？那私立学校高等教育，通通都是大学直接应该要教什么就教什么啊，科学真理照着真理来教嘛。然后你也没有必要去禁止说，诶，我要在学校里面，如果我要有一些是宗教的信仰的传道解惑，为什么不可以？为什么要从联邦来禁止？不可以在学校里面讲有神论，只能讲无神论。无神论其实到最后也是一种信仰啊，它也是一种宗教信仰，只不过它讲的是无神论啊。为什么你可以讲这个？其实我认为那是完全是错的啊。演化论，演化论，我认为从头到尾就是假设，而且是假的，从来没有任何一个考古的证据证明演化论是真的。我们从来没有看过，几千年来没有看过一只猫变成一只狗，有这样子演化吗？你看过任何一只猴子、猕猴或是人猿变成人吗？你看过人变成猿吗？都没有嘛，这基因是非常顽固的。所以既然没有这样演化论的一个证据，那为什么我们会相信说人是从爬虫类然后慢慢进化过来的？连一个演化的证据都没有看到，我们是如何相信演化论的？那真的比这个一道雷打中一个垃圾堆，然后变出一台波音747还要再神奇。实情就是如此。那为什么不准在学校里面讲？只能教演化论，而且是假的。好，所以这个是有问题的。那川普的第一个要务就是要把教育部给结束，联邦的教育部哈。那教育本来就是回到各州，然后每个学校要教什么就自己教什么。 这个你一定觉得不可思议，我一定控制这个国家，我一定来洗脑，对不对？我怎么会把教育的权利下放到每一个人可以自由教什么？这个才是真正的美国的建国的精神。他真的就是照着他当时在竞选的时候所讲的东西，他承诺的事情就一步一步做给你看。而且真的，今天才几号？今天是2月8号啊，他就任还20天了嘛？这真的太惊奇了，不到20天啊，他给你每一天，我们讲他的事情讲不完啊。我今天讲3个题目，然后每一题其实都对中共是非常这个凄惨的啊，不只是乌克兰的问题。本来有一些人期待，就是说乌克兰的问题哈，中共可以得利，因为川普一定要跟中共谈判，你不要再介入乌克兰跟俄罗斯了啊，那你停止介入，我是不是把台湾卖给你？没有这回事啦，他直接跟乌克兰就谈好了，你只要给我这个稀土的采矿权啊，我也不要全部挖走嘛，我跟你分啊，那何乐不为？所以泽连斯基秒回啊。所以当川普一再的说每一个月都跟你讲一次台积电有问题，为什么赖清德没有赶快飞奔而至？应该要到华府去啊，对不对？好，那我们今天讲的第2题就是有关于乌克兰跟俄罗斯的这样子这个长期以来的恩怨情仇。那其实也讲到了中共的3年大饥荒啊，所以当你没有转型正义，这个国家不可能会正常。德国为什么东西德合并之后，他做了这么多的努力在转型正义上面，这是有原因的。一定要把转型正义做好，然后彻底回复这一些被污蔑的人，然后死者应该要去祭这些亡灵，因为苏联的大饥荒跟中国大饥荒其实都发生了人吃人的悲惨的事件。这真的是最惨的事情了，而且你根本是人为的因素导致粮食不足。那这样的问题没有比这个我们讲希特勒、纳粹去迫害犹太人更严重吗？那我们只知道以色列被迫害，犹太人被迫害，我们不知道苏联自己迫害自己的国民，中共自己迫害自己的国民，这不对。所以所有人类的历史，这个共产历史翻过那一页，可能千百年之后，人类在重读2020年、19世纪、18世纪、20世纪，会说啊，20世纪从几年到几年曾经发生过共产党之乱，大概就是这样的啊。可这个乱还没有过去，但是中共已经真的走到末路了。美国绝不可能放弃台海，如果放弃台海的话，代表所有经过台海的所有的经济55%，涉及全世界的这个经济重要的命脉，最后跟中共缴钱啊，你莫名其妙还要再输血给他，所以他是公海，应该要办这样的一个公海的研讨会，国际研讨会，第1年就在台湾办。第1年移师到美国去办，那不管是在华盛顿 DC 还是在纽约，在哪里办都可以。国际会议邀请所有军舰啊，有经过台湾海峡的啊，有很多的货运公司，国际大型的货运公司都一起来开这个国际会议，团结力量大嘛，然后一起来对抗中共。包括其实今天石破茂对不对，跟川普的这样一个 meeting 啊。其实他们2个在之前的通电话就讲过了，台湾海峡的安全非常的重要，至关重要。那所以对石炮来说，因为他需要拉抬他的支持度嘛，所以能够跟川普见面，这对他的支持度是有帮助的。那记者其实都不去问石破茂的问题了，大家都在问稀土的问题啊，或是在问Doge的问题，对不对？好，这个很关键嘛，哈。